Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, Mom. I'm on TV.
In Czech, we say something like, the luck is there for those that are ready. I'm doing so many things because I want to experience a lot of angles of the reality. And then people are saying, oh, this is bullshit science, we don't like it. And you are not a scientist, why are you saying this? To be an inspiration for people that didn't have it figured out when they were 18.
Okay, it's my pleasure to welcome Lucie Ráčková. She is many things, a researcher, an explorer, an analog astronaut. So I'm really excited about this. And yeah, let's jump in. So you've experienced a lot of different kinds of analog space environments. Which would you say is psychologically harder? Physical confinement, like being in a cave, or endless barren landscape, like in Antarctica?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
really
I just jumped in, yeah.
it's really a pleasure, and I'm so looking forward to talk deeper with you. I don't know how to answer your question easily. I think it depends on a lot of other factors, not only how confined the space is, but also about your personality, of course. If you're claustrophobic, then you would hate the cave. And on the other hand, if you're really reliant on some kind of support and structures, you would hate vast nothingness where you actually cannot hide and seek. And also about the objectives of the mission, of course. And there's no easy answer to that.
What do you find personally harder?
I don't think that I find hardness in this aspect, whether it's closed or whether it's open. I think for me personally, there are other aspects of missions that or expeditions that can be challenging.
Okay. Like what sort of aspects? Like the team dynamics or the goal of the mission itself, I suppose?
Yeah, I would say that for me personally, but also from some interviews that I read and from the research before, one of the major aspect is the job itself. Usually it's goal-driven missions and expeditions. You have some objective that you need to accomplish, and it's important to you. And if things don't go well because of various reasons, in isolated, confined, extreme places, it's usually also weather that can prohibit from the objectives that you actually want to do. Sometimes it can be people, sometimes the results don't work as well. So that can be frustrating. But also the team dynamic itself, if you are with people that you can actually get along with and they are supportive or not.
So these like macro aspects of like whether I guess the environment that you're in are a smaller factor than the specifics of the mission and the team that you're on when it comes to your stress and how you adapt.
It depends. So if the environment and the physical environment is within the limits of adaptation, then that's lesser concern, right? If there is cold, but you still have a warm place where you can actually dry your wet clothes, if you have enough food, if you actually can get decent sleep, then getting cold from here and there is fine if you have enough coverage. If it's excessive, it's above the limits that you physically can adapt to, then that becomes really a big problem, of course. And it's above the goals, because then you start to a little bit fight for your life, which should always have a priority against everything, naturally.
Have you been in a situation like that, can I ask?
I think that maybe the Antarctic is more challenging in a way that if something would happen, the help is really far. It can take days. And I did a little scientific work on this, writing a paper, trying to reframe a little bit what summer expeditions and winter expeditions can encounter, because usually it's said that the winter expeditions are more extreme and more dangerous because it's in dark, it's really cold, it can be like -40, the winds are really fast,
Right.
and it's
Very different
impossible.
to the summer.
It's
Yeah.
impossible to get. Sometimes, most of the times, it's really impossible to arrive by plane, and that's really challenging should something happen. On the other hand, these winter over stations usually have some medical capabilities beyond the basic help, which is kind of opposite to the summer expedition. So, for example, what we encountered was there is a hut, and in the hut you can make yourself comfortable, and you have a medical doctor on board, and that medical doctor has some capabilities to save you should something happen. But he cannot perform surgery, there's no equipment, and usually if something really serious happened to you, his main objective is to keep you alive until help comes.
Yeah.
And then whether that help comes, it depends again on the weather. So if you are lucky and there is a good weather, you need to wait for some transfer. And our station didn't have airstrip. You can use a helicopter, but you cannot come with airplane. So it will be helicopter if there is available helicopter. Maybe maybe the military is using it for some other reason, and then maybe it can be ship that can take a day. So it's not that it's summer and it's much easier to come for you. It still can take days, and sometimes days can mean the life. So it's not it's safer, but it's not super safe. And in the caves, again, if the cave is quite close to the hospital, I think that in the scientific literature, if you speak about extreme medicine, the help is that the nearest hospital is more than 1 hour, 1 hour distant from you. That's like the remoteness is defined as this.
Okay.
So if something happens, it depends on the severity of the thing. So if I slip and I fall and I crack my bone, I think that's gonna be okay. But if something more serious would happen, then again, the help is not immediate and there is still this kind of a risk.
And do you think this plays into the way that your mind works every day while you're in the analog mission? Like, are you very aware of how far away help is?
It should be definitely something that you consider and you keep in mind, but it shouldn't be something that makes you really scared.
Yeah.
You should keep aware of the fact that if something happens to you here and it is a dangerous environment, it's slippery, for example, it's the terrain doesn't need to be even, right? So you can fall, and the probability of that is higher than in a civilization. And if you fall, it can be complicated to get you out. So you should be careful doing stuff, and you should not do something really dangerous. Every step should be thought through. On the other hand, one should not be very scared of the fact that they are in cave and, oh my God, I have to climb this, and if I fall, this is going to be really complicated. This is not the good adaptation.
You were in the Antarctic for 60 days or so. It was part of a longer expedition, but you were, yeah.
The expedition has had 83 days,
Okay.
but we went on the expedition during COVID, so we also had to spend a mandatory quarantine in Punta Arenas in Chile. That was for like 10 days, 11. And then we went to the Antarctica on a boat and on a plane. That took 2 days, let's say. Then we were on the station, I think 60 or something days, and we moved from our station to the Uruguayan station. They hosted us for a few days and then we come back.
How many of you were there?
It was at the Johann Gregor Mendel station, which is operated by the Czech Antarctic Research Program.
Yeah.
There were 16 people at the year of the
And
expedition.
these were your research subjects?
Yes,
Okay.
they were my research subjects.
Yeah. Did you do these experiments on yourself as well?
Yes, I was also experimented on.
And this was during the summer?
It was during the Antarctic summer. So for us in the Northern Hemisphere,
Yeah.
it was winter. And
Okay. And you gave an indication before, but can you describe to us like just how different is the winter and the summer in Antarctica?
well, I just read about the winter. I didn't experience that, but of course, summer is a period where the days get really long, when we arrived in the Antarctica, it was on the New Year's. Actually, we celebrated the New Year's there. Even in the midnight, there was still a little bit of light. And of course, if we would come closer to the South Pole, it would be even more light. And the days kept being long through the whole expedition, which is nice in case that you really want to do a lot of work and not sleep at all.
True.
On the other hand, if you want to sleep, it's nice to have the hut. If we would be there only in tents, it would be a little bit more tricky. And in the winter, there's darkness. You cannot see anything if you don't have an electricity torch or whatever, and it gets really cold and windy, and usually in the winter expeditions people don't go outside so often because it's really uncomfortable.
So maybe this summer kind of mission is not something that's been studied very much. Maybe analogs.
Yeah, and I think that's pity. That's one of the works that I prepared, because when I was at the station, and when I was not measuring my subjects, which wasn't quite often, right? I tried to make it as minimally invasive to their lives as possible, because their objective is not to be my subject, but their objective is to do their jobs. They are also scientists or technicians. They are there on their own mission. So I also try to help them here and there, coming with them on their missions, especially with plant physiologists. I also was partially funded by the department, so I had to collect some samples for the plants.
Is this the Mendel stuff? Gregor Mendel?
The Mendel is
related?
It's not genetics related particularly. It was related more to the extremophiles. So how do specific mosses and algae and what are they doing? And there were, for example, a little shieldings on the ground in various places of the peninsula or the island, and by the shielding they tried to model how inside of the shield the temperature should have risen by like 2 degrees Celsius. So they were trying to model how the Antarctic flora will look like if it gets hotter by 2 to 3 degrees. So something like that, for example. And then there were geologists. So there was one guy actually from Britain. Okay. He was a very cool guy, and sometimes he had once a month he had to go every 8 hours collecting the samples of how the water flows and everything, and he had to do that in 24 hours, 16, 20, right? So he couldn't even sleep properly that time, because he would have to make the route. That's like 2-3 hours. Then he had 1 hour long nap, and he went again. So, for example, I was helping him in some of these routes, or there were people doing glaciology, studying the glaciers, hydrology, so stuff like that. And I felt like, wow, but this is how it's going to be like when there's gonna be exploration expeditions again in space flight. Because in the International Space Station, yes, you are hidden in a big capsule. You don't go out. If you go out, it's big feat, and it's very important, and it's dangerous, etc. But you don't go out and dig for stones, collect samples. But that's gonna happen when we go to the moon. They're not gonna be locked all the time inside of the capsule. They were actually going to go out and use the tools. And I was like, why is it not more intensive to collaborate with these people on these summer expeditions? Because this is exactly what's going to happen in future. So maybe you can bring them the spacesuit here and there and see how ergonomic it's gonna be. I am sure that they are working on it in lab, but the more feedback you have, the merrier, right? And the same is for the lightning aspect. So, of course, the winter over expeditions are great analog for these capsules and for the spaceflight itself. The cruising on a spaceship, because you don't go out, there's the sunlight doesn't work periodically, and yes, winter overs are great then, because you have the artificial light all the time. On the other hand, when we go to moon, there's gonna be probably, if we are not in below the ground in lava tubes or whatever, if we imagine a surface station, there's gonna be a day and a night cycle, very different from the Earth one.
Yeah, like
So-
2 weeks on, 2 weeks
Yeah,
off, something.
2
like
weeks
this? Yeah.
on, 2 weeks off, which is actually very similar to what is experiencing at least for the 2 weeks on in the summer Antarctic expeditions. They also have a lot of light all the time. So why don't we use this to more often,
Yeah.
at least publicly?
That's a good question. Okay, cool. So first of all, extremophile, I think, is a great word to describe you. Someone who seeks out these extreme situations and then you study the way the body adapts to that stress. Would that be a fair way to summarize the broad strokes of what you're interested in?
Yeah, it could be actually. Yeah. How is it possible that, for example, if we talk about people, how is it possible that you experience something really strong and you don't get mad? Like, what is happening in people that actually do and in people that don't? And it can be really crucial to understand this for the sake of protecting others.
Yeah, this is exactly what I want to talk about. So awesome. So to what extent do you think people can adapt to a situation like Antarctica? Like, I know you've looked into people, how they found a mission like that when it was their first time doing things like this versus when they've done it before N times. Do they learn how to cope? Did you notice a great change, and did you notice an adaptation, basically?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned this first time versus multiple time aspect. It's also important to know that the current or contemporary expeditions differ from the first explorative missions at past. If we talk about Shackleton or Amundsen, that were completely different settings and objectives of these expeditions. Now it's not just to come to the very hostile place and survive and
Race to the pole, yeah.
yes, and put the flag. And now it's actually more civilized. Some of these, like McMurdo, that's a one big city. There's like, they can be even thousands of people. So that's not super is isolated, but still it is kind of, yeah. So you are placed in this one place and you are being taken care of. Even if you have the tents and you go on the shorter summer expeditions where you venture, you must, at least now it's not about just a survival. You should take care of yourself enough to actually do the job. So we are talking about a different aspect than just surviving. Yeah, I think I made that clear.
Got it. That's an important point.
And regarding this aspect of the adaptation and the first timer and experienced explorer, this is actually something that I found in the research that I conducted. It was a very interesting observation because, yes, I have read in the literature that experience is important. Yeah. Because if you're experienced, you are less stressed because you are confident and stuff like that. When I talked before the expedition with the subjects and I was asking what kind of stress they anticipate, if they are stressed and what about, the first timers actually quite often repeated. Almost half of the people were first timers, which was also nice. They repeated that they actually are kind of stressed about their capabilities, if they are able to perform, if they are going to do a good job, if they would like it, and everything. The people that went repeatedly, they were stressed about the amount of work and about the workload. So they said, oh, am I going to finish what I have done before? There's some surplus work now, so that was the major concern. And then, so that's the first difference, like different stressors. And when we went to the expedition, what I did was that I gave them smartwatches, like the Garmin ones. And I asked them to measure their heart rate using an activity on the Garmin watch. Especially I was interested in the nighttime.
While sleeping,
because during the day it's messy. Everybody is doing different stuff. It's not standardized enough for me, and the amount of data from 16 people from the short of time would not allow for like a robust analysis of the daily activity. But during sleep, you sleep. Like sleep is dynamic state. It's not so easy. There's multiple phases, but everybody is doing the same thing basically. Nobody is, you know.
It's a nice control.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of standardized in this way, at least.
So you looked at the heart rate variability.
I was not able to do heart rate variability because I did not have the continuous signal.
Okay.
But I had second by second estimates, which is something that I could have derived from the Garmin watches. For the signal, I would need some halter. Would be more uncomfortable. People don't usually like to wear these things. Watches were more user friendly and
Less invasive.
it fit the purpose. And what we did was that we took the recordings, which they marked. Like I started sleeping, I woke up, and we used the time to make a mean value of that. It's rough, but it worked. Like mean value of heart rate during the sleep, and let's track it over time.
During each phase of the sleep, or just in general?
Just in general, just whole sleep and
Each day, data point.
yes,
Okay.
which is super impressive. Like this kind of data set is unprecedented in
It's really
current,
cool.
in current Antarctic literature about people. There are some wearables data, at least like it's the trendy thing now, but they usually measured only, let's say, 1 day a week for 2 months. Yeah, so I would
Wow.
only give them the watches on Sundays, let's say.
That's crazy.
But I did it every day. My subjects did it every day, and then all credit goes to them because it's not. For some people, it was really uncomfortable to wear the watches during night. They were not used to, so they actually went forward for this for me. And what was fascinating was to get associations with these daily night heart rates and their weekly assessment of the mood.
What did it correlate with?
So that was really fun because there is multiple aspects of this expedition that's tracked. So in general, there are subjective ratings of stress. Like every week we were asking with the standardized questionnaire perceived stress scale, asking how they feel they have a control of their life, how much stress they experience. Over the course of the expedition, the ratings decreased.
There's subjective evaluation of
how stressed they are.
Okay.
It was mostly, the trend was mostly decreasing. There was a few humps, but it decreased so much when I looked at the norms for the Czech population. The mean value and the range was even below what is considered a norm for that question. So that was fun. Like, okay, the people in generally, they subjectively rated the stress as less. Very similar observation we found with the heart rate during night. So over the course of the whole expedition, the trend of heart rate was decreasing. And there were a lot of humps. So if I would pick wrong dates, I would actually find like higher spikes. But because I had so much data, we could have plotted the trend, and everybody, it was down, it was decreasing. And the pace was, I think, 0.35 or something like this per day, which in 2 months, and that I remember in the whole expedition, it made 3.6 beats per minute, which is kind of a lot. You start with, let's say, 60 and you end with 57, which is nice.
I'm amazed that their subjective evaluations seem to match with their physiological signs. Like, this is cool.
So what is the interpretation for those that would not know? Like the heart rate is influenced a lot by sympathetic and parasympathetic branches, and usually sympathetic branch is the one that controls the higher pace of heart rate. So we can assume that if the heart rate is lower, the sympathetic branch is less active, and during the sleep, it means we can assume that means that the person was in deeper rest because the sympathetic branch was less active. So that is what leads us to the belief that they might have been under less stress because their sleep was not under such a strong sympathetic tone. Yeah, so that's the reasoning behind that.
I see.
And then when I looked at the associations with the other subjective variables, what actually was interesting to me is that, contrary to what I would expect, there was no association between negative emotions like depression and anxiety on the magnitude of the difference with the heart rate.
I see.
So normally you would say, oh, anxious people would have much more, you would see an influence of being anxious or not in this. But no, not in this case. In this case, one of the moods that influenced this was vigilance, vigor. Vigor.
Vigor.
Vigor, being energetic, happy with life and enjoying life. This is actually the questions in the questionnaire assesses this. So they are asking you, how many times this week have you been actually happy? Have you been feeling full of life and energetic, etc.? So that. And so this leads me to a conclusion. That in an expedition that is more or less relieving the stress, so there is not this aspect, it's really important to have positive emotions to actually enhance this stress-free response of the organism. So it's people that actually the depression and anxiety was not so strong as the positive emotions, and I think that's very important observation.
That is interesting.
On the physiological data. Yeah. And then, on top of that, the vigor influenced it by, let's say, I think it was around 1.7 beats per minute. So if you would be unhappy and I would be very happy, there will be this 1.7 beats per minute difference.
Yeah.
And in people that were experienced and that were first timers, there was a difference. So the factor of that caused the difference with a magnitude of 16 beats per minute.
Wow.
And then you can say, okay, but people that are experienced, they are usually older. So maybe it's going to be an age effect. But we put that in model 2 and that was not significant. So we can rule out the age, and that's the effect of the experience. And that's super interesting because you can say, yes, we know that experience is important, but we have so much data. We have 2 months of heart rate, and then we have this factor. So are you here for the first time or have you been here before? And those people, 8-8, it's 8-8 people, okay, but still. That makes difference 16 beats per minute, and it's not age-based. So that's
so
a
cool.
lot.
Yeah, you've actually quantified
physiological marker.
Yes.
Yeah, it all has its limitations. Okay, it's a small sample study. It's the mean heart rate for the whole duration of night. We tried to filter out periods where the person is actually standing up, maybe going to the toilet. We filtered that, but still, it's very rough metric. But I think that this connection is quite impressive to bring to the literature. Yeah.
Super cool. So in your research, have you looked at the basic stress response? Is it fundamentally different depending on the group that an individual is in? Or does the stress just vary in intensity with that group? Do groups cope fundamentally different under stress than individuals? Is this borne out in any research that you know?
The combination of group assessments, how team works, and the individuals is a field on its own, let's say.
Okay.
So I was mostly concerned in the individual basis. I had some questionnaire regarding the group cohesion, whether the people felt like they understand and share the roles and not the roles, but the objectives of the mission, if it's the shared understanding and if they have a good friends there. I had something like that. But again, we did not focus on the analysis too deeply there because the sample size is really low, and I definitely would like to go deeper in this, but I need more data to confidently start analyzing it.
Okay. How much of the success of a crew would you say is down to the talents of the individual versus the team cohesion? Maybe there's no data on this, but what's your your view on that?
There should be somewhere some data, definitely. From the top of my head, I remember Susan Bell.Maybe you remember her too.
At SSP?
She was teaching the human performance in space at SSP 23.
Yeah.
And she's the head of NASA's Human Behavioral Performance Lab.
I remember seeing you guys talking for a while.
Yeah, no, Susan is very cool.
Yeah.
And she's an expert in the team science and how to build a team so they can work the best. And also she's studying how to make teams work better.
Yeah.
And definitely being put with strong and successful and capable people, it's one thing that you have a group of people that are like that, but then you can mix them in a way that they just would not get along really well. And it's important to keep in mind that different personalities, different interests, cultures also can influence the course of the expedition and the success, for sure. That's one of the big things.
Okay. Now, I think I have a theory that when there's a short-term mission, like say 1 or 2 weeks, there's a lot of different kinds of teams, shapes and sizes, which could be successful. But the longer the mission runs on, when you're running into months, 6 months, even a year, I think the kinds of team configuration, you could say, which is successful, that number gets small pretty fast. Mm-hmm. You need like a specific kind of like leader or a follower, because over that time, conflict is kind of inevitable, right? Over a year. So I guess the question would be, what would you say is fundamentally different between a team which can be successful for a year versus only like a week or a month?
There has been definitely some research done on that. And definitely, again, there is difference between different cultures.
Okay.
So, for example, if you have a expedition full of military people, they are gonna expect a different kind of leadership, and they would appreciate different kind of leadership than the scientists. They are just very different on the aspects like authority and rules and schedules and stuff like that. Yeah. So that can be one of the aspects. And another thing is definitely the ability to tolerate each other and to be agreeable.
What does that mean practically, to be agreeable?
To be agreeable sometimes means that you don't put your interests in the front, but you actually have to consider also others and their objectives and their perks, and you should be able to offer help when it's needed. Sometimes even maybe when it's not. Yeah. But then on the other hand, you should not expect everybody to help you, because they also have their things. So there is some balance in that. Yeah, sometimes you can do something about it and you can offer help. Sometimes it's not welcome. There has been some groups that actually express that they would prefer rather not talk about these things so much, because they just don't want to hassle it, and they want to focus on something more here and now. And on the other hand, there are groups that would say, oh, but I like to share and I like to actually be heard and stuff like that. So different people have different needs, and one should try to understand who are the people that you are with and how to best live with them and cooperate with them. Yeah.
And the stakes are really high, you know. I'm picturing that, you know, our first few missions to Mars, where people have to be in close proximity for, you know, months, years at a time. If you get any of these things wrong, it could get really bad really quickly.
It might.
You know, the team dynamic could just decay quite quickly, and, you know, hopefully it's not drastic, but it could definitely affect the outcomes of the mission. So, okay, this is interesting. So you want generally cultural cohesion. So from similar cultural backgrounds or an ability to adapt and be agreeable to other people being different?
One interesting aspect is that you would assume that the shared culture
Yeah.
would mean that, okay, let's put in a mission people that are actually from the same culture group. Like,
Yeah.
okay, let's put Europeans and then Russians and then Chinese and separate them, and that's going to be better.
Yeah.
And the research showed that actually in these missions, cultural diversity would predict better performance over time in the longer missions. In the longer term, where actually in the sometimes the interpretation can be that if you have very similar people over time, they will get pretty bored with each other, or like it's more fun and interesting to be from the different cultures, because then you can actually spend time discussing stuff and how is it in your country, how are you doing things. I think that was one of the outcomes of the Mars 500.
Okay.
Where they were isolated for 520 days. So they spent the time talking about stuff, how they are cooking this and how they are celebrating that. But it's about the people. If you can discuss cultural stuff without being oppressive or threatening, or maybe sometimes you can disagree, but it has to be non-hostile. Then that's okay. You know,
That's so interesting. Wow.
so it's more about like really being a good person.
So how do we find these people then, the good people? I guess they naturally filter up, you know.
Perhaps one of the things might be that these people actually seek out this adventure. So people that seek out the adventure and seek out this kind of missions, they will be more determined to accomplish the mission. That's one good point. And then the previous experience. So you try to see whether they have been doing something like this.
Yeah.
And whether they succeeded. Maybe that's why for becoming an astronaut, it's super important to be really successful in a thing that you do.
Okay.
Because that's what matters. If you are able to be excellent in what you're focusing on, and that's one of the key points that they look for, which is natural. Yes, if you have a great person in what they are doing, then placing them in another job would maybe predict that they would be also very good at the other job.
Yeah.
Because they have already proven that they are capable of excellence. So
best chance, I guess. Yeah. And then you put enough people together who cover each other's blind spots, and you have a good team. Okay.
of course you need to assess that in like team dynamic, groups and tests.
Yeah.
So that's also part of the astronaut selection. And then when the astronauts are selected, it's part of the astronaut training, because the group really has to get along really well, they get to know each other. What is driving them mad, what is actually calming them. So if you understand that up front, it's much easier to be on the mission, because if something happens, you already know that this person doesn't like to be pointed at their mistakes. You know, if you say, oh, again, maybe that person would be unhappy, but some other person will actually find it funny. So
you'd like to know this stuff ahead of the mission starting. Right. Okay. With that in mind, what's your opinion? Do you think we will train astronauts on the moon, which will then go on to travel to Mars? Do you think that will be like a prerequisite? Because you have like a lot of similar conditions, like you have low gravity, high radiation, temperature swings.
I guess it also depends on the dose they will receive on the moon. If there is some kind of a threshold that you are allowed to receive, I think it's currently the dose is 3% of risk of mortality. But I'm not super sure about it, but I think it's something around that. And maybe if you don't exceed that threshold, you will be allowed to go to the Mars. But Mars doses of radiation will be extremely, extremely high compared to what we have on ISS, for example.
Hopefully when we're on the moon long enough, we can solve a problem like that. Like learn how to not
shield it very well. Yeah, let's assume that.
Yeah, let's hope. But maybe it's true that there won't be many people who spend time on both the moon and Mars, at least with our current technology. It's like, pick one or the other.
Yeah. I guess that especially for the first mission we see on the Artemis now are very skilled astronauts.
Yeah.
So we can expect that first Martian astronauts will be also gathered from the experienced part.
I'm just so fascinated by this. Like, what people do you pick to be representing all of humanity, and who just have the highest chance of success? You can never guarantee it, but who gives you the best chance? I think it's awesome. Yeah. With that in mind, I'd like to play a little game.
Okay.
It's called Astronaut Crew Draft. So what we're going to do is, let's imagine you're on a committee tasked with selecting astronauts for a long duration mission, like a journey to Mars. I'll present some details about individual astronauts and potential like crew compositions. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what might work well versus what might not. Of course, I understand this isn't black and white. You know, there's no definitive answers here, but yeah, I'm just curious on your perspective. So let's start with unisex versus mixed crews. So say all men or all women versus like mixed gender.
I would say that mixed might be better for the long missions, but it should be definitely picked very well as for the team dynamics.
Sure. What do you think could go wrong in a unisex crew for both sexes?
Just based on the literature that has been presented, and I don't claim that I know it exhaustively on this specific regard, because again I was studying more on the individual basis, the individuals, but I have stumbled across these kind of studies, and it might be for example full male groups that it can get a little bit more aggressive at some point. And
I bet we have a lot of data on all men crew
because of military and everything like that. So the women can play a more soothing role, let's say. But sometimes for the women crew, and I don't want to sound like stereotypically or something like that, but there are some studies on women that can become a little bit competitive
with each
other. Because of, and especially in environment that does not have lack of resources, which is kind of interesting. So if there is no need to fight for some resources,
they
like you don't strive, they fight. They are more competitive over what they have if they are in a wealthy state. Like if there is
really?
no,
Interesting.
yeah, there is one study which was really robust and discovered that. So that's fun, but. In general, I don't think there cannot be a good unisex group.
Yeah. Like there are groups which could work.
If I would pick which has better chance to survive on a longer mission, I would maybe say the multi-gender group.
Yeah. Can I ask on the female competitiveness aspect? Is that heightened in the presence of males, or is it a constant?
I would like to answer you that, but I really did not get super deep. Yeah, but it is definitely super interesting.
Yeah, it is. Okay, awesome. Now this is a juicy one. Should we send asexual people to space?
Asexual people? I don't see why we should not send asexual people.
So these are people who are, you know.
Yeah, they don't
so
crave, or they don't enjoy, or they don't need.
So this would be your preference?
I think it could resolve some of the concerns that are present, and it's not only the fear about having sex and maybe conceiving a child in space, which is definitely, especially ethically, complicated stuff, and it's also about the families that you leave at home if you are an astronaut and you go. Usually astronauts just don't appear from sky, you actually have a family and maybe wife or husband, maybe children, and they all they will miss you for the whole duration of several months or years. And if we talk about the Mars stuff, and there needs to be a strong support to keep these relationships as healthy as possible in these conditions. So the astrosexuality stuff is really important to consider and to talk and to research. I don't know if I'm like pioneering the field in a way that would most people think. Like I would do a lot of research already. Unfortunately, I did only a few small data collection here and then, but I actually started really thinking about it and trying to see what are the next steps and what are the aspects that we can actually study pretty well. And I think that a lot of the stuff can be resolved well by starting with some methods that we have now. And there is a method called assessment of sociosexuality, which is, for example, the willingness to engage in sexual relationships which are uncommitted.
Uncommitted. Okay.
Uncommitted.
Oh.
So there are people that are very okay with uncommitted sexual relationships, and then on the other side of the spectrum, there are people that would not do that. They don't think it's a good idea, and they definitely would do something sexual only with people that they know they are in long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And then it can be a little bit similar to the personalities, extroverts, introverts, or something like that can be researched quite well. It has been researched since 1960s, maybe even before. And that was something that I implemented in the analog mission lately. And it seems like it can, again, yield pretty good data on the team composition. And it's definitely very important because I have checked some of these statistics from the Antarctic expeditions, which are of course more frequent than the analogs or the space flight. And the US Antarctic Foundation, they published a study where they said that really the majority of women, more than 90%, think that the sexual harassments are important topic, and every other woman have experienced or personally know a woman that experienced some kind of harassment within the context of Antarctic expeditions in the US.
That's terrible.
That's
Oh my
a lot.
God.
Like, yes, and it's okay. It exists. The issue, 90% thinks that it's really important to be. I should have checked the numbers again. I had it in my.
Yeah.
In my interview.
And how much is that compared to like the average person in a population?
I don't know that. I did not check that.
Probably also pretty high.
Could be pretty high.
Yeah.
And it's shocking that it's not researched super well, and it'd be nice to overcome this by maybe with the new generation of neuroscientists and a new generation of explorers, these topics would be more accessible. And it's also hard to start research on this because there are more pressing things, and of course, yes, there is the pressing need of studying the radiation or the pressing need of studying the neurological effects of space flight. Yes, that's true, but this is also important.
Fascinating. Okay. Yeah, because when you introduce these potentially sexual dynamics in a super confined space, the small number of people, you risk these really strong bonds forming, and then you end up with favoritism and impartiality. These are things that would bring up conflict, I suppose.
Sociosexuality aspect, I especially see like the potential for conflicts in the opposite expectations. If you match, for example, if you don't encounter the sexual relationship with anybody, but you are actually in the presence of person that is behaving in some way, and you think something is okay and something is not, it's your core value, let's say. It's your core value that you think that people should be sexually active only with people that are committed relationships. If you see someone who is really like a playboyish and Don Juan vibe, be it boy or girl, you might feel repulsed by this person because they're doing something that's not right to you, and you might feel like it can just make it more negative to you. And the same on the other hand, so you are a very jovial person, you make jokes and it's funny and you flirt, and that person is like really giving you cold nose and everything, like prude, no fun. you know, and then it starts to become unpleasant in some contexts, right? And then if something happens between these two oppositely charted people, the one that is uncommitted would expect that it was fun and goodbye, and the one that is committed would expect that, okay, let's now do a couple of stuff. And then that can really create an unpleasant atmosphere.
This happens on the surface of the Earth as well.
Yeah. Who would rather? Yeah, people be people, right?
Even if they're in space.
And there has been some cases of astronauts actually having some love triangle stuff.
No way.
Yeah, right.
Documented?
It has been kind of documented. I don't want to go too much in depth of this, but we this aspect of relationship stuff doesn't spare even astronauts.
So we're still on the committee. We're picking a crew.
Okay.
The next up is neurodivergence. So people maybe on the autism spectrum or with something like ADHD. These can have advantages, you know, in their ability to focus. But obviously when communication, open communication is so important as well. Maybe you want people who can read people also really well, which you might not see with someone with autism. What do you think about that?
I did not actually get into this topic, and I definitely should, because this is a very interesting question. And personally, I think that there might be some traits or aspects or like some tendencies that can be really helpful, but then neurodivergence can bring also aspects that could be really harmful in these situations. So it really depends, and I would not maybe make any strong claims and comments on this. I don't think it's research enough. Like I don't even know if there has been a study putting a group of neurodivergent people, like let's say really like specifically discussing and studying this aspect. And it would be nice to make space more inclusive. Yeah, it's a big topic. Yes, let's make space for everyone, for every nation, for every worker, for every worker. Like for
this is the ultimate
person,
goal, I suppose, is to have everybody in space. But in the early,
but the pace is not very brisk.
Okay,
yeah. Because of
Lucie, or
we will see, I guess. Depends on the private space flight ambitions and abilities, and then depends on the flexibility and openness of the governmental space flights. Because now it's very complicated to imagine even the para-astronauts to come to space.
Yes,
we have one in ESA, reserve para-astronaut, and
is he a monoplegic? Like one leg, one leg on. Okay.
It could have been for some specific cases of special needs. It's important to know that special needs is very broad, and para-astronauts can be also defined very broadly. Like there is so many specific handicaps that you can include in this description, and that's really something that's crucial for people that are decision makers on how the future will look like regarding astronautics and whether inclusion is possible. So, for example, I had a discussion with someone that is collaborating on building the gateway, and I asked whether, especially because gateway is also heavily based by ESA's efforts. So, if ESA is doing para-astronauts and gateway is and ESA works on gateway a lot, I asked, do they consider the possibility that para-astronauts will come to the gateway? Like it's a brand new station. We can make a difference. So far we found that ISS is good, great, we can survive, we are building gateway, we can make it inclusive, we can make it now by design, we can make the change now.
Bit of context for everyone watching as well is that this was your department project at SSP, right? Related to para-astronauts, which you won the best department project for.
Not only me, there were also 3 other people.
3 other people, but
in the team.
There you go. Pretty cool. strongly introverted versus strongly extroverted. This one is maybe more obvious. You'd like maybe like a mix, people who can exhibit both. If they're too far on either extreme, then they will grind on each other's nerves. Yeah, would you agree with this?
Again, it depends on how you exhibit your extrovertness and how it's accepted. If the people can accept it, then you're fine.
Right. So you can have a super introverted person who loves a super extroverted person, and this can be a great pair.
Yeah. If they express their own personalities in a way that's compatible to them, then that's fine.
Right. And you can only know this in advance by observing these people together. Like, that's interesting. Like, on paper, you couldn't see two resumes and be like, these people would be great together. It's
a match. But everybody knows that you write your resume for the job, right? And you highlight stuff. It would be very nice if people would actually be super 100% truthful about everything. What are your biggest weaknesses and what are your biggest positives? And it would be really interesting if people would be actually forced to write their biggest weaknesses that are not like, sometimes I work too hard.
I'm a perfectionist.
But you can be, okay.
These are fake weaknesses.
No, it's not like it's fake, but maybe you have something hidden in a closet that you don't want to take out for the CV. And then it's taken out in the group dynamic exercise, so that's why we did it.
Okay, bit of a random one. Do you have a theory for why we've evolved to yawn? And
yawn?
Also, to yawn.
Okay.
Yeah, like when you're tired.
Okay.
And also, I want to see if we can get through this conversation without yawning, because it's super contagious, right?
Stop saying yawn, and then I will not yawn. I was interested in this. I even read more than I would have a theory. I read some studies of people that are actually trying to find the reasoning, and I don't want to answer this. It's complicated, and I don't remember it perfectly.
Quite technical, is it?
Yeah, I am not sure now how it's with the mirror neurons. I know that they have been in the literature. They have been involved in you are mimicking the other person.
So we have neurons specifically in our brains for when we see people.
And they are like. Yeah. But there has been some controversy around it, and I'm aware of it. But I forgot, and I don't have it fresh in my mind, so I don't want to go deeper. I know that my dog, when she yawns, I also yawn because it's very shared.
But these could be mirror neurons. You're similar enough.
But I don't want to. I cannot claim this with any certainty, so I wanted to avoid this.
It's alright. I won't quote you on it. But I think it's like every animal with a spine or something like this exhibits some kind of yawning, and also babies in the womb yawn sometimes.
That's true. For dogs, for example, if they yawn, it's also a sign of them being in stress, and it's like a calming signal for them.
Interesting, but not so for humans.
I don't know. I feel a little bit relaxed after I yawn, so maybe a little bit.
This was a bit of a random one.
It's fun one.
Yeah. Okay, here's another one. How do you think the world will react when we land the first human on Mars? Do you think it'll be very different to the moon landing?
I did not experience moon landing, so I don't know. I have heard and read that it was really important event, streamed almost all over the world. And it was actually not so long before people invented planes, right?
Yeah. People in the same lifetime saw
basically
the first plane and also on the moon. Yeah.
So that's also kind of a shocking. And now we have planes and we have International Space Station. So it's a question how many people will actually appreciate what it meant to get people to Mars and hopefully safely also back. And so that's one aspect. And how many people will be there to actively deny this thing? So maybe
like they did the
of course, because we see that there is so such a big group of people that are actually believing in the conspiracies and also spreading the conspiracies, which doesn't necessarily need to be aligned.
Yeah.
And it is the question who will get to the Mars and what's going to be the political background behind it. Of course, that's me being very very practical or very pragmatic about it. But
That's cool.
from the perspective of science, of the perspective from people that actually appreciate how advanced we can get, I think that's going to be one of the big stepping stones. But I am personally not so focused on Mars, although I know that it's one of the biggest major goals of NASA and the US. Then I'm more happy with focusing on the settlement on the moon, because I see the parallels of inhabiting the Antarctica or even like colonization of the world, that kind of stuff. So it's nice to see that within our lifetimes, most probably, it seems like we will be witnessing settling the moon, being there for some time, and I think that's really exciting and fun.
Yeah, to go to the moon and stay there.
Yeah,
that is really cool. Yeah, they won't be able to deny it then, will they?
I mean, you can deny whatever, like...
it's fake.
Yeah, not here,
CGI.
Actually. Yeah, this is a holographic thing. It was AI generated.
Yeah, this is AI.
So...
Yeah. I think that's a good segue, because I want to talk about the future. I'm personally like obsessed with AI and how this can play into the future of space exploration, and I'd love your perspective on it. Even just opinions, things like this. This is fine. And fitting into crew dynamics as well. So let's talk about what an AI might feel like as part of a crew. And the kind of AI I'm talking about are, we've seen great advancement from LLMs like ChatGPT. I want to assume that we have an AI which is conscientious, so it can actually read sort of the feelings of the person that it's interacting with, whether that be through the conversation that they're having, just the text, or also maybe measuring the physiological signs of the person on the ship. So let's say the AI has this information. Do you ever think an AI could be an effective commander in a long-term space mission? Do you think this would work in sort of like human psychology?
Yeah, that's really interesting question. Because when you say, can you imagine AI being part of the mission, I'm always biased by the TV shows or movies that are actually existing and they have this person. If I'm not so much on the Space Odyssey, but I am just in the Red Dwarf vision. And I have the Crichton and Holly. Yeah. And the Crichton is actually the computer that is actually is assessing your emotions and how are you doing and helping you with stuff.
Comedic effect.
Yeah. And then there is the Holly, which is like Siri or something like this, and processing and computing, and she guides you through the universe. So I can envision these characters being and working in the future missions for sure. And about the command, that's a really interesting question, because so far I have understood that our objective is more to make AI comparable companion to maybe like not a servant, but to a human. Yeah. And to help you and assist you with tasks. But so far, humans were always put as the final and primer commander. So as far as I know, and I hope that it's still true, people still are assumed to have the prime over the AI. Yeah. So we should be able to pull the plug or to redirect the commands.
Yeah. The final decision should be made by a human.
Yeah. As far as I know, that's the now consensus on how these AI stuff should be implemented in operational environment, like for example spaceflight.
Where do you think it could play a really helpful role?
Well, Very typically, especially from the literature now that claims to use this for the benefit of humanity, it's for very mundane tasks that are just super boring and it wastes our time. I remember that there is one joke about a person saying, I don't want AI to write poems and draw for me. I want AI to do laundry and do my dishes, and I want to draw and write poetry, right? So something like this. And of course, it can also help us in the times which are very difficult. And we need more workload, more cognitive abilities on some aspects, and we might miss others. So we want AI to help you with this.
So with like reasoning, being
If there is a very complex situation and you need to focus on one aspect of it, if some other parts of the complex situation can be handled by AI, you have low crew or whatever.
Yeah.
That's where you go. And of course, if we talk about the Mars or long space missions, the AI can be very effective as your companion.
Yeah.
Or to transfer messages and provide you the environment of which you desire. For example, you can model having dinner with your family because the AI would have learned how they would react. They also maybe send the messages, and it can apprehend how they react, how they behave, so the system can then present you a dinner with family in a very similar way how it would actually go.
Wow.
Which I think is quite dangerous sometimes because, you can actually modify the behavior of your virtual companions. Like you can... My favorite comparison, which is like detailing this, is that you are an astronaut and then you tell your AI to visualize your wife and make her be nice to me. Like you can definitely say like you can modulate how the people would react to you, which is definitely not very healthy because then you come back to the reality and it's going to be different and you're going to be happy about it. So you can get back to the AI. Yeah. It can be dangerous. Yeah.
Potentially, if we do it right, really mitigate or eliminate that feeling of loneliness or remoteness from planet Earth. Like when we're on Mars, the time delay is, on the order of minutes. So having a realistic, natural interaction is almost impossible with people on Earth. But yeah, with AI, you can discuss a lot of the problems that you're having maybe day to day. It could function like a kind of therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so many people are now using the LLM and features of ChatGPT, for example, with the therapeutic part.
Really?
So yeah, because I also use it sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, because
You find it helpful?
yeah, sometimes you just need to hear reconciliating words, or you want more objective stance on it, or to consider what kind of opportunities you have on some situations, what are the options. So sometimes you also just want to share some really unhappy emotions, and then you can write it in diary. But this diary is like from the Harry Potter too. It can respond to you, like the David Riddle, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't force you to go to the cave and
Chamber.
Yeah, to the chamber, sorry. But this one is actually say, oh, I hear that you are very frustrated and this situation must be difficult for you. I understand that.
That's nice.
It might stem from the fact that you wanted this and that. Have you considered to and something,
Yeah.
And it's, it's not thinking, it's guessing, but still sometimes this is exactly what you need to hear. And you don't need, of course, if you have friends, you can come to friends, but sometimes friends are not there every time, and you don't want to bother them all the time with stuff, especially if you have period in your life that's not very bright, so you don't want to. Sometimes people don't want to come every day to other people, and I'm still feeling miserable. I still don't know what to do and stuff. So this can be quite nice, and you don't have to wait for a therapist for so long because, of course, I'm not sure how it's in different countries, but in Czech Republic it's really difficult to get a therapist and start the sessions because there is so little of them. So
This is just on demand anytime.
yeah, it would not ever replace the human contact. But again, the human contact is complicated because even if you find a therapist, then the therapist might not fit you very well because different personalities, different styles, it just didn't click. So then you have to find another, and then you start sharing again all of your stuff. You know, it can be really daunting, and having this AI companion on hand for the most basic and most not even menial, but like acute help.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like the first acute thing that you can do, I think it can serve the purpose very well.
Well, this is maybe a ethical sort of question, but on that data, that in theory, that the conversations that a crew member is having with an AI, these data could be collected and analyzed. Do you think that should be kept private, or should it be observed by people on Earth checking
Oh my
in?
God!
Should it be like is this a huge invasion of privacy? Is it necessary or not?
That's interesting question. It's also similar to, knowing all of the medical records are important because you need to know whether the person is happy, healthy, and ready for the mission. And I think it depends on the application. So one thing is that you can use the information to monitor the person whether it's fit for duty or not, in a sense that you can actually say, okay, you have been unhappy and unwell, so we are sending probe to get you home, or whatever, right? Which maybe will not happen on Mars, but assuming that we have more frequent stays on the orbital stations like Midway or another stations around Earth, more close, you can maybe also depart the person because they're not doing well.
Yeah.
Or you can use it to actually monitor whether the person is doing well, and if not, you try to make their life better without endangering their stance in the mission.
Yeah.
Which is also, it's also fair to try to protect the mission because the mission is also important. And the astronauts are kind of a tool to get to the goals of the scientists and of the people, the investors who want to do some projects in the mission. So of course, the mission should be successful. Nobody should die. Ideally, we should collect data. So it's important that everybody is performing very well. So on one hand, yes, it's important to capture when something is not very right. And maybe it's also important to perform some kind of to
Extraction.
get extraction maybe
Bit strong.
in really
Yeah, intervention.
some intervention. But I would rather see this technology to be more like a helper.
Yeah.
Maybe there can be designated people, very specific designated people that will actually be able to see the content.
Like therapists, maybe like professionals.
Yes, something like that. I would not like my boss or the head of the program or like the commander to see the transcripts. It should be private. It should be like a therapist thing. But maybe for the concerned stuff, you can maybe not share the specific things, but just the summary content, like stuff like that.
The concern, I guess, is if they're interacting with this AI that they can't trust, will maintain, what do you call it, privacy. They won't relay the information. Then they won't be honest with it, and then they won't get the benefit from it.
Yeah.
So yeah, ideally, I guess it would be kind of private, other than in extreme circumstances, maybe.
It would have to be if we want to actually get the benefit from that. Yeah, that's true. Okay, and did we finish with selecting the crew?
Yes, that's over now.
Okay, so we have multiple genders and we have sexual people.
Yeah, and neurodivergent.
The neurodivergence is considered, but depending on how it's
Yeah, and being introverted or extroverted is not does not give you prescriptive ability. It's
you need to be a nice person.
Yes. In summary.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of an intense one. BCI, so brain computer interface. You've worked with it in the past, right? A little bit.
Okay. Just
that's cool. More than most people. In theory, in the far future, do you see a benefit for astronauts or, people tip of the spear doing an important mission using a brain-computer interface to tune down the stresses which would otherwise affect their performance?
Do you think maybe that by sensing brain waves that would be typical for a stressed situation, let's say, to make it simple, they can lower the intensity of light, or maybe more shielding of the sound, something like that?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or just, when we talk about stress, what are we, heart rate, you start sweating, pupils dilate, you like produce more carbon dioxide or something? Right?
Yeah, because you breathe fast.
Yeah,
you know?
oh, sure, of course. So maybe just, one of those aspects gets tuned down a little bit such that you can maintain more of your composure. So yeah, we'd learn to recognize the stress in the brain signals and then maybe administer some kind of, chemical into the bloodstream, which can help in that situation.
Wow. Like we are talking about human enhancement.
Yeah.
Okay, like Neuralink stuff.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I don't know how reliable would that be. I think that in the current state of knowledge, this could be a little bit like playing a God game. Like, okay, I know that if I release this hormone, it's gonna make me feel better. Maybe you can hack it to release dopamine every time you click, which is very similar to, just give him a line of cocaine.
Yeah.
So it can lead to addictions. It doesn't necessarily mean that it can be healthy. So more research is needed, I would say.
A lot more.
Yeah, because so it's gonna be reliable. What is going to happen when you actually start overstimulating perhaps this brain neural circuit? And what is going to happen if you start to pour this kind of chemical or this response? And so many unknowns. I don't necessarily want to say that it's gonna be bad per se. Like if we manage to get it right, it might be fun and it might be interesting. It might help even some people who might be in need. But also, have you played Cyberpunk?
I've not, no.
Yeah, there is a lot of these Neuralinks implemented, and you can just distract the person because you hack it from distance, So, you can hack anything these days. Even some states can be hacked because you just corrupt their whole infrastructure. So that's, I think, very similar to, you can just hack a whole system in the body because you target the brain.
All right. This was some of the more technical stuff. Now we're going to go lighter. What does SSP mean to you now?
1.5 years ago. Yeah. SSP definitely was door opening to the world of space. Before that, it was definitely hard to understand and appreciate what has been done and how broad the space sector is. And I don't personally come from a background that would be I wasn't decided on doing space since childhood. I was not the person that was into the rockets and the astronautics from the childhood. And I don't think, especially nowadays in the modern era, a lot of people came across space later in their age. I also saw some study from the UK asking people from space industry whether they wanted to, why they wanted to do the space stuff. So big portion of people said, okay, from the early childhood, I wanted to do space stuff and I love it. And another quite a big portion said that they started to appreciate or they wanted to do space in adulthood because they wanted to do something that's interesting. And that's me. So I did not know much about space and what was happening. and the SSP was very, very dense, very broad, and I get to meet really the one of the most top experts in the field, from the biggest government organizations like NASA, JAXA, Canadian Space Agency, ESA, people that are heading departments that are doing scientific experiments. They have history of big missions, and the astronauts and stuff like that. So that was definitely one of the most important things to me, and the ability that these people actually are willing to still be connected with you and discuss with you your ideas and your projects and stuff like that. So it was really, really very important. And of course, another aspect is that there is this family, and the family is of the people that we spend the SSP with, so we made a lot of friends. And because I guess that because of social media, we still are in touch quite well. At least we are aware of who is somewhere. If they share, we can see. We are keeping touch with that. A lot of people are visiting each other's. So, like us.
Yep.
Yes.
In a cave.
Yeah, sharing the perks of life. Getting wet in winter. Who doesn't want to do that? And so that's really precious, and it's nice to have people who are in the field, who can talk with you about this stuff that you like, to be inspired. Because coming back to Czech was a little bit cooling off, because the Czech space sector is really niche, and I don't necessarily specifically belong to the core of the Czech space yet, perhaps, but it's hard to find a lot of people sharing the same values and the same goals to talk regularly about the ideas and visions.
Over such a long period as well.
Yeah, and that's what the friends from SSP I have, and the people from ISU, perhaps also when you are on the conference, now you can meet with the people from the same school, so you can get more friends, you have something in common to start the conversation and to start the bond. So that's really nice and really good.
Would you say that you were pushed out of your comfort zone at SSP, and in what ways?
I would say so, yeah. There was a very interesting atmosphere, and the dynamic of the whole SSP is very intense, and it's maybe I would say magical, but it's also enchanting in a way. And that can be one of the best aspects of SSP, but also one of the worst aspects of SSP.
Say more.
Yeah, it's a coin.
Yeah.
You can flip it.
Okay, what do you mean by that? Enchanting.
Yeah, it's a strange world where everything is taken care of. Like, there is a lot of good food, there is a good hotel that you live in. You don't have to worry about any of these stuff all the time. There are a lot of interesting people. There's a lot of going on. The whole days of learning, then networking, traveling, and it feels very hype and very posh, and it is. I think I felt very posh and hyped.
Yeah.
And it feels like you are in a very different world for a while.
Yeah.
And it might not necessarily match with the world that you have at home.
No.
And this can be the enchanting aspect, because maybe you will like...
You're in Narnia.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Maybe some people will experience it less. Maybe I am also biased in some way. Maybe it's only my perception, I don't know. But that's how I feel about it.
And the negative side of the coin with the enchanting thing is...
That you have to get back.
Yeah, okay.
And then... Yeah, you have to deorbit, kind of. You have this beautiful memory, you have all the contacts, and now, of course, it depends on how well you can cope with and how well you can work with the resources that you have and with the experience that you get from it. Yeah.
you get this huge spike, insight into a life.
And you believe that anything is possible, and that
You're so inspired.
yeah.
Yeah. And then you leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you've put it really well. Really, really well. Has what SSP meant to you, has it changed? Like, say we finish in, what was it, September? Has your feelings around it changed, or have what you just described, has that always been the way you felt about it?
Well, not during the SSP, but this is how I figured that SSP was for me when I went home and I started to feeling this, like, okay, I'm back and I have to deal with it's like every time that you experience something that's out of this world, out of ordinary, and then you come back and you want to talk about it, or you miss the feelings, or you miss the thing, and you will be like, oh my god, I would have appreciated much more, and I should have done this, I should have used it better. And so now at least when someone asked me how I would in their shoes, what I would do, because I was in the SPSP, I can at least tell them like what I would do now, because I know that I missed something, and I know that something went well, something went not so good, so I can now at least share this experience.
Okay, why don't we do that then? Let's say there's someone listening who is considering SSP, maybe they've applied or they've been accepted. What would your advice be to them?
What worked really well for me was that when choosing a department or for choosing the team projects and something like that, I tried to look for specific people that were teaching the courses. And I didn't know the people, as I said. I'm like very novel in the field, and but I know that I know what I want.
What were you looking for?
I definitely am interested in the human spaceflight and maybe the biology exploration, stuff like that. Yeah. So this was like my categories of interest. I would also accept maybe some other categories if the person was in some good position that relevant to what I am specializing in. But there is some broad definition of what I am specializing in, which is, for example, not satellites.
Yeah.
Okay, so observing satellites from above and the ground from above with satellites and doing stuff can be very effective in my field. Yes, I could have done a lot of stuff, but I don't want to specialize in that. So that was one thing. It's still interesting. I'm happy to learn about it more, but I can get something better, maybe, for myself.
Sure.
And then you see that there is, for example, my beloved Susan. And I didn't know her before, but I saw she's the director of human behavior and performance research laboratory at NASA. I was like, yes, this person, she will know what she's talking about. She's in a great place. I want to work with her. Yeah. And the same I did for TP. I looked at the TPs and I saw that the metaverse was directed by Jim Green, who is ex-CSO of NASA, and then Jacob Cohen, who is CSO of NASA Ames. NASA Ames is also great. So I was like, I don't care what these two guys do.
I want to spend time.
I want to work with them. I'm not. I like metaverse.
I didn't know that's why you.
Metaverse is okay. I but like I wanted to be with these guys and work with them, yeah. So that was what worked for me, because I managed to actually still stay in touch with these people, and that's the biggest gift I get, for sure. From the negative aspects, I definitely would, if I can get again to the SSP and do it again, I would maybe try to maintain a better routine of self-care
during SSP, day to day. Yeah, okay.
Yes, and really
more sleep
and more healthy habits in general. because I kind of also took it a little bit as a vacation. It was Brazil, and I think that I could have just stayed more focused. Some people did, and I felt at the end, I respected it so much, and at the end I really felt I felt bad about it, about myself. Like I let it so too loose, and I could have get much more from it if I would be more strict about how I treat myself during the SSP, maybe. So
A lot of this is personal to you as well, but there are some general pieces of advice we can extract. Like for example, there might be people who want a department or a TP which is, outside of their field of expertise. I guess particularly department. You'd want a TP which sort of aligns with your career direction, ideally. But there are people who, in fact, there's a preference during the department selection for people who, engineers don't get picked for the engineering department, things like this. So, there's an element which is out of your control when it comes to what department.
But I was not an engineer in space, looking for engineering in space, and I was not working with astronauts.
Yeah.
That's maybe why it was not so bad to pick me for the human performance in space. Even though I do research on people, I was like, I want to learn how it's done in astronauts. But if I would be engineer, or if I would be, let's say I'm engineer, and I don't particularly like the mechanical engineering aspect or rocket science, whatever, and I would like to explore the other areas, then maybe seeing some strong name of the engineer would not be so enticing, because I can talk with them during the lunch break. I can definitely meet them. I maybe heard about them in the lectures, right? So I kind of know what they're doing, but then I want to learn something very specific. For example, the monitoring from the satellites, let's say. I don't know why I'm saying it all over again, but still.
Yeah, remote sensing.
Yeah, let's say I want to learn more about remote sensing. Like maybe I would not care so much about who is actually teaching it, but I really want to spend some time doing this because I wanted to change my career a little bit. So that's definitely fair. It depends on what's your ambition, what you want to get from the SSP.
Yeah. But it's also okay if you go in with maybe no specific ambition.
Yeah.
Like, there was some very young people in the course. I count myself in that group, I suppose. I have a degree in physics, but no idea really what the space industry was yet, or the areas I could go into. So, I knew I liked astronomy and stuff, but I didn't understand the business aspect or anything like this. So during SSP, I found the directions which were interesting. And this is also extremely valuable. So for some people, the best advice is see where the compass starts swinging.
And the most important thing is to have fun.
I agree. And we did. Yeah. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Wow.
Anything come to mind?
Don't talk so much.
You got this advice
I got this advice from someone.
Where?
Don't talk so much. I think it was one of my supervisors, or maybe it was one of the... I remember it was one of the heads of the department that I was studying in, and it was during an exam, and she was like, Lucie, you should not talk so much. Yeah. No, but she I think she was like, when you try to explain yourself, you're making it worse. So, and I have heard that multiple times actually, about the need to explain or expand, and then I reveal maybe that I am not as knowledgeable on something, or that maybe I don't need to over-explain because it's unnecessary. Yeah. So sometimes it's too much information, and sometimes it's okay, you are revealing your incompetence.
And this was the best advice? Like you found this?
It's the advice that now came to my mind. I don't know if it was the best one, but it's the one that I remembered.
It's good. Don't talk so
much.
For some people, that's very good advice.
Maybe if you find it helpful, try not to talk so much.
Okay. To the extent that you find yourself successful, could you boil down the character traits that you think you have which led to that success?
Yeah. Well, generally, I tend also to have some degree of an imposter syndrome, but on some level, of course, I apprehend that I have accomplished some stuff, and I am proud of some things that I have done, and I think that I'm especially proud about the fact that I just really tried to make the best out of every situation that I got into. It's not very day-to-day basis. Sometimes there are high and lows, but in general, I tried to sit down and say, okay, I'm in this situation. What is the best thing that I can get out? And sometimes it's even not. It's very ambitious. Yeah. Sometimes I dream high. I still try to stay within the reasonable limits. Like, I don't want to aim for something that's really not achievable, and I like to maintain my goals realistic.
Yeah.
But then still keeping the ambitions very high.
Yeah, it's a fine line between those two things.
Sure, and it's usually a process. You discover that it's easier or less easier, and then you can modify your goals. That's fair. You can change your goals as much as you need and want. And then if I chose something, okay, on this sounds fun and I want to do my best, then I actually tried to get going, even though things were not working so well. I have had few successes, but I have dozens of setbacks, like a lot. And sometimes it feels like also the whole world is against. Sometimes it's just very specific people that seem to be very against and blocking the way. Sometimes it's when I am doing an interview and it's public, and then people are saying, oh, this is bullshit science, we don't like it, and you are not a scientist, why are you saying this? So these things, it's like, okay, am I actually doing something that's worthwhile? And it can get to my head, but then this is only happening for like maybe a day, let's say. And I try to use a lot of, because I know that it's important to take what the feedback is saying somehow constructively and try to improve next time, and don't not being set back by it. Because yes, lying on the floor crying and not moving in front, that's not gonna help me achieving my goals. And I think that this general mindset I try to keep, like when you are pursuing the goals, you experience a lot of setbacks. Things don't get as planned. You need to change the direction a little bit, and here and there people betray you, so it feels bad. But you still try to just sleep it off and go. And I think that was what worked for me for the success. That to the extent that I apprehend my success, this might have been it. And for actually getting along with this, I use various tools. Like, of course, very important is the social support. It can be your parents if you don't have supportive parents. It can be your spouse if you don't have a spouse, or the spouse is not supportive. You can have friends. You can have ChatGPT sometimes, right? And beyond the social support, it's okay, the routine and self-care and stuff like that. And I also like to actually hear affirmations.
Okay.
People don't like to say that they listen to affirmations if they do.
How often would you listen to those?
Basically, I try to listen to some affirmations every day because of my voice is critical.
Okay.
And I tend to wake up, for example, and think about, I need to do this and that. And then I get very, very pragmatic. And sometimes it's nice to really sit down and focus a little bit on saying the positive stuff. I usually do it in the morning with my walk, and I put the affirmations, and I say, okay, this is gonna be a great day, and I'm on the right path, and or it's gonna work out for me. And it's really nice to just not be inside of the loop of I have to do this and that and this must be done, but to remind myself about this. And also there are affirmations, for example, for the states of betrayal, or where you feel like something not non-rightful has happened. So then the affirmations are more about I want to I can forgive, and I'm forgiving for myself, and this doesn't represent me, like the things that failed, that doesn't represent me, it's the things, stuff like that. So it's nice to, because again, you would have to have 24/7 available person that would say to you, or you would have to be so strong, nothing would break you, and you would have to immediately have these thoughts. So I think I'm kind of strong, but it's really nice to have these recordings to help you overcome these things. And some people would be like, okay, I have experienced something bad, so I go run, and after run I'm very fine. Fair, great. I also do that. It's nice to have multiple tools in your box to deal with complicated situations.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed that about you, is that you have such a diverse range of hobbies and things that you do. Is this something that you'd recommend people to have, I guess?
It depends. I think that most important is to have fun.
Yes.
And you should do something that makes you happy and that you see a sense in doing. So doing multiple hobbies just for the sake of doing multiple hobbies would definitely deplete you of your energy, right?
Yeah.
And if my goal, for example, is to really explore a lot of stuff that's going on in this world and experience, then that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing so many things, because I want to experience a lot of angles of the reality, right? So for example, for my sport, I choose stuff that improve my endurance and flexibility and multi-purposeness. So when I do a new sport, I'm not very not novice. I will forever be novice if I do new sport, but the ability to perform would be enhanced because I would run, because I would do some strength training. I'll be ready for the action.
Yeah.
And
so these things transfer to other areas of your life. If you build up endurance in like running, for example, do you find that it transfers over into like mental endurance?
It can, definitely. Yeah, that's also what they recommend for the exposure to cold. It's something that you can use if you have anxiety, for example, at difficult times.
That's a stressor.
Yeah. It is stressor because you want to get away. Like, it's cold, or you want to go away. And then you should just take a deep breath. And then if you ever find yourself in difficult situation, heated up argument, and people can start getting, it's very similar to that. And then we can like, okay, I can find my peace in this. And maybe you can actually find distance and some peace and calmness in that heated situation too. So for the running, yes, also it's like you do intervals, and I did the intervals last time, and I really wanted to just stop because it was fast and I didn't want to continue. So I started to break down the distances. Okay, just 400 and I will see. Okay, now just 200 and I will see. Okay, now 100, and that's very similar that I can use with my work. There's this big chunk of work. So, okay, let's just do this and then we'll see, and it's going to be manageable. I don't know. It definitely transfers across the disciplines. It's also that I see that if every expedition and if every mission or some adventurous task that I do, I feel like I'm becoming more tolerant and accepting and skilled person. And I have experienced some stuff like today in the cave. When we were climbing the ropes in the slippery mud, I know that I did quite well, because I have experienced these kind of... I have done it before. I have been in the cave doing the analog mission. I was climbing in the slippery shoes before. I was also in confined spaces before. Doesn't bother me. I also went to the climbing school, so I know how to climb. So it's just not so hard for me now. And I like this aspect. I want to do it more. I want to see how far can this benefit go.
I guess what you're describing is like a self-confidence, which is the product of repetitions.
Maybe more like a self-awareness, because self-confidence can sound like maybe overconfident.
I suppose, yeah. But if you're in a cave and you're in a confined space, you're just going to be less afraid if you've done it before. I see this as a kind of confidence in just that, I didn't freak out before, so I'm not going to freak out now.
Yeah.
And also you're aware of this as well. I think that maybe they're equal, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the guy was also trying to reassure us, like this guy, he invented this trail and he did not die. He lives until today. So
yeah, which was not reassuring.
No?
No.
Really?
Well, if you have to add an asterisk of like, there's this guy who did a thing and he didn't die before you start describing it, then I'm gonna be nervous.
Suspicious.
Before we do it. Yeah. And then he's like, who wants to be adventurous?
Everybody.
Yeah. And then we start
And everybody start
crawling through like a river underground. Yeah. This is not something that I've done before, but now that I have, if I do it again, maybe it will not be so scary.
Yeah. And in situation that you would have to, you would not be very scared because you did it.
Yeah. So try to get that feeling in as many areas of your life as you can, or the most key areas.
Yeah.
Just do the repetitions, and the results will follow maybe.
Hopefully.
Speaking of results, the trajectory upwards to your success that we're talking about. You said there was setbacks. Was there like a single turning point where suddenly things just started working out, things started happening in the right way? Or was it just kind of a continuous slog up the hill, kind of?
Also, define me as success, really, because on one thing it's the cliche that everybody says it's the success is that you are doing what you like to do, right?
Sure.
So we can define it also like this.
I guess being on Forbes 30 under 30, this kind of list.
It's nice to receive awards like this. It's nice to get appreciated by public.
Sure.
And it's not public. People did not vote.
Yeah.
It's a group of people sitting in the Forbes that have the list of people, and that they try to decide which combination this year would be the most powerful and interesting, and they have their own interests. And it creates a big FOMO also. It's also marketing thing.
Yeah. Elevates the status of
Forbes, and it brings young readers. Because who under 30, if offered, would not want to be under 30, right? So if you ever think this is an option for you and then you don't get selected, then every year is disappointing, and if you are over 30, then you will be hating every young people that get it, right? So it's like the external validation thing, and it can be dangerous to have your worth being decided by an external forces, because for some people that would matter. They want to be recognized as a successful people for what they are doing. But I like to think about this as bootcut jeans, or like the 70s big the 70s jeans with the big ends, right? There were times where these were the best jeans ever, and everybody loved them, and they would get so many awards, and they would be on every interview. And then there are times where nobody likes these jeans and they hate it, and everybody tries to sell them. If the mother sees if the daughter sees these jeans of the mother, she's like, ugh, I'm not gonna wear this, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna sell it. And then after 20 years, again, everybody starts loving these jeans. So being reliant only on this external validation is not very good. On the other hand, there is this need to have some awards in your resume, because if you are applying for some very demanding jobs and very competitive, they are asking, what kind of awards and recognitions have you received for your work? And nobody actually cares how hard was that for the person to get it. Yeah. I want to see your awards, and if you have the CV and you tick more boxes, then you win. You have to get to the interview, maybe also the personality then, but still. So to some extent, if you are into these kind of jobs, if you want to get them, it's important to have some kind of recognition, and you have to adjust your work. But then it's also complicated for people like me. When I started doing college, I never thought I would finish the college.
Really?
Yes, because it was really out of the comprehension of for me.
This was bachelor's anthropology?
So actually, when and I think I like to share this story because I would like this to be an inspiration for people that didn't have it figured out when they were 18. Like, I definitely need to go to the Cambridge, because if I could go to the Cambridge, I will have so many opportunities, and I need these awards, because if I apply for this job, I need awards, and I need to apply for this specific person because I know that this specific person has very successful lab, so there is this guarantee that I will be very successful. For those people that did not figure this out, I hope that this story can be a bit of inspiration, because I studied the art school. I was supposed to be a musician. I was supposed to play in orchestra and make my living by this. And because making a living like this is complicated, you would have to teach a lot of children, you would have to play in a lot of chamber orchestras, and only a few people make it to the big orchestra, same as with every other field. I felt like I might not be the best of the best, and I might struggle, and I was like, ugh. Maybe I also felt during the exercises that I cannot make myself drill, like play very hard and long through tears, through painful fingers, if you don't feel like it. Some people are, you sit and you play and you don't care about any hurt because you want to do it. I did not. So I was like, maybe this is not the right thing for me. And I just thought it might be fun to try to go to the college. I did not have very good grades on the high school, because the art school was really challenging. In the morning we were studying, in the evening we were playing. There was not so much time to actually process things. And so I didn't know that I can be capable of really studying hard. And the first year was hard, especially because I couldn't choose between two majors. There was anthropology, and then it was separate, not as a second, but there was a separate experimental biology. And I was kind of torn between these two. I was accepted to both. And I was like, okay, let me study both, and I will see which one kicks me out first. And I did not get kicked out. No. I had several of the exams on FFE, fail, and one allowed. But it was also because I had two sets of the exam from one major and the second major. My grades improved drastically when I actually graduated with both bachelors, and then pursued only one major on the anthropology. I got straight A's, B's. That was very easy then. And so at the first year of my university studies, I was doing the both. I tried to figure out whether I will survive one on the other. And that was very hard. I had to adapt to a new type of learning, very different from what I had at the art school. And I just got interested in specific subjects, and there was one associate professor who once appreciated some of my very crazy ideas about how things can work in the nature, and he supported my ideas. And I asked him if he would like to be my supervisor for bachelor thesis. He said yes. He had many of those, but we had also long conversations. He really supported me in my thinking and in my endeavors, and since that time, I just found my passion in science, and I found what I did not have in the music. I found that I can sit by computer and write and study, and it doesn't matter whether I am actually good or not. And I have received setbacks and people telling me that I don't get this and that, and I was just getting the feedback, but still working on the texts, and I just get better and better and better in writing and doing the science and connecting the thoughts. And eventually I got to the PhD, and eventually I finished the PhD, and I did all of these it allowed me to do all the adventures. And I think when I write an article, it's well written. I like that I got published in the Q1 journals. The Antarctic study was in Nature Scientific Reports, which is nice with 16 people. It's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. So I guess that it can be in some way described as a success, especially considering the resources that I had, which were really limited. And it's definitely a success for the young Lucie that didn't know that she could even finish the college.
Wow. That is pretty inspirational. Yeah, it's just a very real story. You know, people often only see the front face of the success that we're talking about and assume that it was a straight shot the whole way.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah. When it's rarely, if ever, the case.
Yeah. It's a lot of luck, always. But then in Czech we say something like the luck is there for those that are ready. Because you can be lucky, but if you don't have ready and prepared and you need something to work.
I just have this image because I think it's cool.
It's inspirational.
It is. It is. Were you swimming in this, by the way?
Not swimming, no, it would not survive swimming, this prototype.
Of course.
It was to actually detail the thermosensors. Because now you can see on the picture that I have thermosensors also on my leg, on my belly, on my arm.
Yeah.
You wouldn't normally see it. This is also an important part of the prototype. You need the thermosensors because the entropy is calculated not only by the gases, but also by the changes in the temperature production.
Got it. Through metabolism.
Yeah, the equation is based on the premise that for stress to happen, it's an adaptation response of the body, and for that you need energy, definitely.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you want to make your heart beat faster, or if you want to produce cortisol, or you want to run away. It's just like your body needs some energy.
Yeah.
And how is energy made? Well, you have sugar, for example, and you divide it, and you divide it in water and CO2, and then also there is some residual heat. So by getting these variables, you can estimate how much entropic the state is, and then you can assume that if the person or the organism exhibits a big entropy to the outside world, it might mean that the organism is under big changes, and the changes are necessary if you need to change your state, which is in the stress. So
this is really cool.
That's very cool. That's the idea that came from the laboratory of my former supervisor, Professor Dobrovolna.
In Brno,
in Masaryk University.
This is really cool because it's agnostic of the particular stress which is manifesting. It's kind of taking a step back and looking at the whole picture of what the body is doing in terms of energy, rather than specific like increased heart rate or breathing.
Yes, I think that as I have understood it, the premise is that when you need to create some kind of change, you need to move from the environment, you need to change your physiology, that consumes the energy. So you need to create from your disposal the energy, and that is releasing the residual heat, and that is what creates the entropy and reveals the entropy.
Can you give us just a bit more context? What were you doing in this picture? Were you like running around? You just said you weren't swimming, but...
No, I wasn't swimming, no, and it was a nice day, and we needed some pictures from Antarctica to show that we tested the prototype, and some promo pictures. And it was very beautiful day that we can see the ice that's being gathered around the station. So this is actually a little bit challenging state should someone have a medical emergency, because if a boat would come, it would be complicated to get to transport the person to the boat because of these big ice chunks. But it's nice to look at, and we managed to climb on some, and it was just very nice to take the pictures.
Was it kind of wobbly?
Yeah, like it's ice on water, so it's stacked, of course, on the water, and it's it can be very sharp on the edges. So
Right.
and also as it is cold, and if you cut yourself with the ice, you don't feel it very well because it's so cold. It numbs a little bit, so you need to be careful of that.
What are penguins like up close?
Yeah, they're fun. Yeah, they are very
I
fun.
really want to
Yeah.
see a penguin in the wild one day. This is my dream.
Yeah, at the beginning of the expedition, there were groups of penguins, sometimes like 3 guys, let's say, and they would just, the bros, and they come and they chilled with us. So every time a penguin came to the station, 5 people went out of the station with their cameras and started taking pictures, and the penguins were just shaking their arms and maybe gliding on the belly. It was very fun. Then we also saw some very small penguins, like the babies, and maybe they got lost or whatever, but they were crying, and I was like, oh, I'm so sad, and you cannot touch them, so they even wouldn't let you, but you cannot pet them. No, only reason that allows to touch any animal is to have a scientific objective in it.
Because you prefer them to not adapt to humanity kind of at all.
You
Keep
should
them in their
not
natural
intervene,
habitat.
definitely. Yeah, you should not intervene with them.
Yeah. Were they curious about you though?
I think yes, to some extent. Like they kept the distance, but they just sometimes went to visit and see. And
Cute. Okay. I have some other pictures which I'd like context in. Is this also Entrant?
this is also the
Okay.
prototype from the company Entrant, and that's from the first space analog mission that I went, not as an analog astronaut, but as a researcher, and
In Iceland?
in Iceland, yeah. And there was just a cool mirror, so I used it for
It's a
the
cool
picture.
photo.
Yeah.
I have another cool photo which looks straight up out of, like, this looks like space.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Does it look to you?
It looks like a cave in space. This is incredibly immersive. Where is this?
It was in Astroland Interplanetary Agency. It's in Spain, and it's a cave-based analog.
How long was it?
Just 5 days.
5 days. Okay. It looks crazy.
Yeah, that was also very slippery, and we had very flat
Yeah.
shoes, so it felt a little bit like what we experienced today.
Yeah, well, today was probably easy in comparison because your body is like at least streamlined.
Yeah, and
It's a big suit.
you don't have to have the big helmet. Yeah, that was challenging a little bit because you couldn't have the full trees, like the full field of view. You were limited by the helmet.
Yeah.
And fogginess of the helmet.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then you need to maintain high performance and calm in situations that are uncomfortable. Yeah, it can be challenging.
What's the hardest analog environment that you've been in?
Would you say? I know this is a factor of the
Yeah.
different work, but what is the answer?
I don't, I think I haven't been in analog that would be challenging for me. And I definitely would love to be in maybe the underwater analog one day. That's in Czech Republic. There is this startup called Hydronaut, and they have a company which has like a siphon, underwater siphon, and it has like maybe 10 meters square. I'm not sure. It's really small, and they use it, for example, in the saturation diving. So you can have a chamber that you can actually, spend some time in instead of just hanging in the water for several hours. And now they have taken it from the water to the surface, and it serves like an analog. The surface analog. You can actually do some missions. We are going to plan also some mission for this spring. For some individuals from Czechia, Slovakia, Poland, and Hungary. And once they submerge it again, I think that is going to be very space-like. You know, you have to dive there
Yeah.
in the diving gear, then you have to on board down off your diving gear. You know, there's a lot of water and stuff, and you go up, and you're locked in a very small room. You can hear, smell, see everything. You cannot escape. Like there's no privacy. It's really confined, and you will do some work. And yes, that's extreme, and I would like to experience that sometimes, just to see how it is, and but meaningfully, not just for the sake of it. Of course, like it's gonna be fun, but if it's gonna be just for the sake of it, I would not enjoy it. It definitely needs to have a bigger meaning.
All right. I think this is a good way to end.
Okay. The last
The last
survivor, yeah. But it was very fun to talk with you and to get interviewed by you.
Cool. Well, thank you very much again, and until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.